Let's have a little look at the theme of the day. It's about evidence-based management. Title of our session, Evidence-Based Managing of Software. Maybe it's a topic that sort of the Agile movement hasn't really addressed. How to manage in an Agile context? How does managing happen? What's the role of management? Let's have a little look at it. I've got a couple of things I would love to talk about with you guys. It's about, let's have a little look back retrospective on the first decade of Agile. It's a bit more than a decade, I know, but still, it sounds a lot better. Decade of Agile. The act of managing, what does that mean? The act of managing. And then let's combine those two and think about evidence-based managing of software. So a decade of Agile. Agile, let's say the term already existed, obviously in English language, but it was invented in 2001 with a manifesto for Agile software development. I like to use the full name, not just the Agile Manifesto, the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. It gives a bit of a different focus. It was about Agile software development. Something that we've seen happening, and not in the complete first decade, but at least the past couple of years in the Netherlands specifically, and more European countries, there's some sort of Scrumpede. You know, it's like the stampede word in English, where you've got this herd of cows and deers running towards something en masse, like massively going for something. Nobody knows why they're doing it, but everybody goes in the same direction because, you know, this is what people do. We want to be Agile. We want to become Agile. We want to do Agile even better. Scrumpede. So it seems that the first decade of Agile has been sort of dominated, is that the right word? Dominated by Scrum. People going for Scrum, often blindly, not knowing why, not thinking about why, and so just doing Scrum because of Scrum and because all of the other ones are doing it. And does it help? Yes, it's improved our world a lot. Can we do better? I think we can do a lot better than this. And it also has the danger that we'll have a sort of Scrumpede in the reverse direction, everybody going away again from Scrum because, you know, it's not solving our problems. No, just blindly doing Scrum without understanding why and how, it's not going to solve your problem. So there's a bit of observation from us, even Scrum people, on the first decade of Agile. There's been a little bit of a Scrumpede. Everybody is going for Scrum, not always understanding why, but let's not be too negative about it. It's done great things. I think this has achieved a lot, but we can do a lot better. Now doing Scrum, there's a little survey. Let's do a little survey. Who's doing Scrum, by the way? Who's been doing Scrum? Oh, impressive. Scrumday Europe, and a lot of people actually doing Scrum? That's good. Okay, so Scrum, how Agile has Scrum made you? Who says, well, we're 100% Agile? Who says, we're doing Scrum and it's made us 100% Agile? You're just afraid, right? Okay. No, it's not 100%, but certainly more than 90% Agile. So, oh, okay. Okay, it's not 90%, it's less than 90%, but certainly we are more than 75% Agile. You're the most incooperative audience I've ever met. Okay, so it's not made you more than 75%. My last guess, doing Scrum has made you around 57.305% Agile. You see? Okay, so that's a funny question. First of all, how do you know that? And is that important? I don't know. Maybe some things to think about. And it sort of connects to the idea that the world of Agile and Agile software development is sort of really dominated by a lot of opinions, subjectivity, subjective opinions, intuitions, and so on. Let's see how we can deal with that. And let me first show you a couple of things that maybe fall under this category. You know what? Agile has failed. Agile's been around for a decade. Well, you know, it's failed. It's over. Agile done. We should stop talking about Agile. That's an opinion. Oh, no, what? Agile is dead. It's over. Agile is dead. Forget about it. Another, probably, opinion. No, Agile is not dead. Another opinion. Some people may say, Agile is not only not dead, and Agile has not failed, but you know what? Agile is really the future. That's another opinion. And believe me, this guy knows that he's probably the most opinionated person in the whole industry. He's got some strong opinions. Try to work with him every day, I can tell you. So he knows that this is not broadcasted in public, so I can use dirty words. He knows that he's probably the biggest bullshitter of this industry. And my story hasn't changed because he's not here. Because in spirit he is here. He can sense what I say. So he knows that he's like that. But still, a lot of opinions, and some very strong opinions that sort of dominate Agile. Agile has failed, dead, not dead, it's alive, it's the future, whatever. I don't know. Well, maybe I know. Here's a conclusion to the state of Agile. After the first decade of Agile, nobody can tell you what the actual state currently of Agile is. Because nobody knows. There's only opinions, there's only things. Nobody can tell you what the value, the actual value is that as an organization you are deriving from the fact that you're doing Agile. That you're moving towards Agile thinking, that you're trying to maybe even be Agile. But what's the actual value getting out of it? I'm very sure that your investments in Agile are pretty high. You hire coaches, consultants, you invest in tools, in infrastructure and so on. Many companies totally ignore the values of Agile. Maybe not so good idea, but at least the returns you get out of your investments, you have in general no idea. So you're spending a lot of money on something, you have no idea about the value you're getting out of it, you have no idea about the value, the returns you're getting out of it, you're ignoring the values, and then even worse, everything we know about Agile is based upon opinions, it's subjective. This is not only my conclusion, but probably also only an opinion. So lots of opinions in our world. In the meantime, software is still eating the world. If you look back at 2001 and where we are now, so let's call this the first decade of Agile, software is actually eating the world. Software is all over the place. Software gets our electricity in our homes or the water in our homes. It's driving our cars. It's all over the place. It's in public, it's in private services, it's in facilitation. Even companies that are not software companies, that are doing other types of services, often provide their services via software and are highly dependent on software. So I think there's another urgency that we should tackle. Instead of thinking on trying to get a name out of saying Agile is dead and I'll get a lot of attention by saying Agile is dead, maybe we should think about improving the industry, the profession of software development. Maybe that's more important than trying to get a good name out of saying Agile is dead or Agile is not dead. Let's have a little look at the act of managing. What we see happening a lot is a lot of people, management positions, managerial domain, whatever, take decisions upon one of these sort of basics. Oh yeah, but I've read in a magazine that we should do this. We should go for Scrum. I've read it on Google. Google says that Scrum is better. On my last team, my last company, we did it like this. So let's just do that again. Let's copy paste the recipes of other companies and other things and so on. Or you know what? I don't care. Hire a consultant. Even better, hire a consultant and ask the consultant to Google about it, and then he'll bring us a solution. Or hire a consultant, Google about it, you will end up with a tool, enter the tool, spend a lot of money, and the tool will make us in the end fire the consultant and Google will make us Agile. That's sort of maybe not the most professional way of managing or doing management. What if we would add evidence to all these little subjective things like opinions, gut feel, my experience, I have read that, and I've been at this big event with all these CIOs and amongst each other they are bragging, yeah, we're doing Scrum, we are much better than you guys. So yeah, but we're good too, but the next day I run into the office and say, we have to do Scrum because they are doing it too. Maybe, what if we added evidence to that? Well, let's have a little look at evidence. What might evidence be? Evidence assumes, in our opinion, two aspects. First of all, an assertion, something you assert. You make an assumption. You want to achieve something. You set a goal, whatever, you make an assertion. And then you're going to collect data that you can match against your assertion. The data will either validate your assertion or might contradict your assertion. So there's no guarantee that your assertion is true. You make an assertion, you act upon it, you gather evidence, you gather data, you look back upon it, and that's sort of the whole thing that we call evidence. So you need an assertion and you need data. And often data works a little bit better, but it's adding evidence to opinion and gut feel. It's not completely replacing it. That's a very important. There's some qualities hidden in the idea of evidence. There's sort of different types of evidence. You could look at sort of the left-hand side of the scale and think about what we call circumstantial evidence. I like to refer to it as secondary evidence. It's supporting evidence. It's like more weak. It's like you've made an assertion, you've collected data, you look at the evidence over your assertion, and there's an indication that this might be true, or this might be validated, or this might be contradicted. But you know what? The evidence doesn't really exclude all of the other options. There might be other explanations that are equally valid. So it's like circumstantial evidence, more weak type of evidence. And then there's very strong evidence, direct evidence, something you can't ignore, something you can't deny. It says, yes or no, your assumption, your assertion is true or not true. So that's sort of, and there's a whole scale in between it. But in general, we distinguish between circumstantial evidence and direct evidence, very, very clear or unclear. Let's have a little look into types of evidence. Let's say there's an assertion, this cat ate the missing bird. That's our assertion, and there's a piece of evidence we have. We've got this picture, so we go into a court of law, and there's a jury sitting there, and there's someone saying, well, there's the cat. He should be going to jail because we've got this picture of the cat. This is our evidence. How would you call that? Circumstantial, direct evidence? Circumstantial evidence, yeah. So if you look at the scale of weak to strong, this is rather weak evidence. Lots of things might have happened. The cat just picked up that thing from the road and just picture was taken. Maybe the cat did eat it. Maybe the bird flew away, You can't ask the cat because the cat fled, so the cat's gone. But it should be convicted, right? He ate the missing bird. What if you look at our same type of evidence in our industry? Scrum is a good way to build software. There's an assertion, and we've got evidence for that. We've Googled it, and there's a number of people on Google saying, yeah, Scrum is a great way to build software. It's the best way to build software. Here's 10 good reasons to do Scrum. Would you call that strong evidence or rather weak evidence over the fact that Scrum is the way to go? It's pretty weak. That's not really direct evidence. It's not really proving that Scrum actually works. Just someone putting some things, a hit list on Google, on their website, saying, you should do Scrum. So that's still pretty weak. So this is how our industry works. Another type of evidence. Agile projects are more successful than waterfall projects. That's an assertion, and we've got evidence for that. There's a paper, it's called the Chaos Manifesto, and it's been investigating stuff and so on. So there's evidence that an agile way of doing projects is better than a Scrum way or than a waterfall way. Weak, strong, what do you think? Medium, but still some doubt, so still a little bit on the weak side, because it's more like anecdotal evidence. There's a couple of companies saying that it's better. It also has to do with what's your definition of success. In Agile, we think differently about success. So we think in terms of value, not in terms of time, scope, budget, and so on. And this is what success. So this is still pretty weak, and it's more like anecdotal evidence. It is more like circumstantial things. Another assertion. Increase your velocity eternally. Keep increasing your velocity, and you will be more successful. And some people have been saying that. So how would you call that? Strong, weak evidence? I would say it's rather weak. You can produce a lot of software, have an incredible amount of velocity, but you may still be producing the wrong things. Maybe you're producing things that nobody wants. Maybe you're producing still some crap, I don't know. Velocity as sort of replacement for the old thinking of productivity. And yeah, we've been increasing our velocity like with 300%, and we're now like 5,000% faster than waterfall projects. Yeah, what does that say about your value, your success in a way? That's still pretty weak. Another assertion. Make sure that the teams stuck with the process and follow the process and act upon the process and do all of the things that the process prescribes, and then you're more successful. And there are some things you can assess, you can audit your teams, you can audit your organization. How well are you sticking to, I don't know, whatever you're doing, Scrum, Lean, Kanban, I don't know, extreme programming. How well are you sticking to that? Yeah, and make sure that the teams stick to the process, and then we will get more valuable software out of the door. That's our assertion. And we've got some proof. We're going to do an audit and assessment within the organization, assessing our teams. How would you consider that? More like direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, more like on the weak side of things? Or if you would audit your teams and you would find out, oh, we're 100% with the process. What's the guarantee? What's the evidence that you are actually being successful on the market? It's rather weak. So maybe some things you want to consider when you look up articles or, or analyst reports or whatever on the state of Agile. A lot of opinions still, and the things we present as evidence, if you look at it carefully, it's pretty weak evidence. And that's maybe a problem for our industry. One last assertion. Adhering to your schedule, making sure that you're in time, there's sort of an ideal burn-down thing, and if you're above it, you're behind schedule, otherwise you're ahead of schedule. And make sure that all of the teams stick to the schedule and the burn-down chart and so on. Weak or strong? Evidence of the fact that you are successful and you're going to deliver more value. Pretty weak. So even as a Scrum freak, can I call myself Scrum freak? Yeah, all of these burn-down charts, yeah, they should serve a purpose. Transparency, insights, visibility, and so on. As evidence, it's not really strong evidence of the fact on how agile are you, So let's try to introduce more evidence and think about evidence-based management or evidence-based managing of software. Evidence-based practices have been applied in a lot of industries, mostly known in the medical practice, in medicine. So let's say the 80s, the 90s. Before that, a lot of the decisions in a medical practice over the treatment, the cure a patient should get, the medication he should get, was based upon a lot of the gut feel of the expert, the doctor in this case. So it was all about, let's say, in our terms, sort of the manager's judgment, the doctor's judgment. My experience says, my gut feel says, I think that, and so on. And then they started introducing evidence. From research studies, not only surveys, but giving real medication to real patients, carefully following up on that, respecting ethics and patient values and so on. And they started gathering real evidence of the actual effect of medication on real people. And then doctors started using that, adding that to their gut feel, their experience, their opinions, and so on. And it seems that the quality of decisions in the medical practice incredibly increased. It went up sky high. So using evidence to base your decisions upon is a great idea. We don't do that in software development. We've got gut feel opinions, we've got Google, we've got consultants, we've got tool vendors, and so on. So let's try to use the same idea in software development. It's being used in the meantime, not only in the medical practice, but in lots of other industries, and pretty successful. So why wouldn't we go for the same? So let's try to use in software organizations evidence-based management or evidence-based managing as a way to maximize or optimize the value of the software to your organization. So you're putting out software to the market. Let's try to optimize the value that that software brings to your organization and manage upon that idea, manage upon evidence. Yeah. So no longer only the manager's judgment, but adding evidence to it, and maybe some values and ethics too. Might help us in our industry at least. Yeah? So let's go into evidence-based managing. Who recognizes this statement? Where does it come from? Yeah, this is one of the principles of the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. It's about producing valuable software. It's about getting value out there on the market. So that's a great purpose. And it's a very different purpose from schedule adherence or process adherence or being in time or producing all of the upfront projected or expected scope against the budget and the timing and so on. That's a very different way of looking at things. This has been around for more than a decade. So let's try to bring evidence-based managing and use it to do what the Agile Manifesto has always intended, look at the value of your software and work with value. So the idea with evidence-based management is go for direct evidence, so not circumstantial evidence, go for direct evidence and use that to manage your software and optimize the value that the software brings to your organization via your customers and so on. So how can we do that? Well, let's repeat again that direct evidence is going to look at the outcome of your work, not on how you produce your work. All those things like process adherence, on schedule, burnout charts and things, that's all got to do with how you produce work. It has nothing to do with the outcome of your work, the impact of the outcome on your market. The customers you can convince, the competition you need to overrule or fight against or be faster and so on. So that's sort of the problem, the general problem in our industry. All of the statements we have over Agile is working or Agile is not working, it's all about circumstantial evidence. It's all about how we do the work. It's not about the outcome of the work, the value of the work to your organization. And we can use evidence-based management for that if we start looking at the outcome and we sort of grow into a sort of way of thinking, managing that is sort of agnostic on whether you do it with Lean, Kanban, Safe, Scrum, Prince2, Agile, CMMI, whatever, all these fancy things we've got in place. Let's look at the outcome of the work and then use that to go back to how we produce the work and optimize both. Yeah? So direct evidence is evidence you collect over the outcome of the work, the what you produce, not how you produce it. And that's a very, let's say that's a little bit of a shift. I think if the Agile movement has achieved something, it's going away from waterfall command and control structures and very individualistic behavior into teams, self-organizing teams and so on. I think we can do better than that and not only look at the teams, but look at the work that comes out of the team. So shifting away from the people doing the work and, hey, the outcome of the work they're producing. And we've been thinking at Scrum.org about some recipes to help people doing this. We try to be low prescriptive, but still we've got some ideas on how you might be collecting direct evidence of value. So direct evidence of the value that your software is producing for your company. And we think in terms of current value, you might have an evidence of the actual current value that your software has to your company. That might be incredibly high. But it might be like going back way back in time in the 90s, Microsoft had probably a very high current value of their software to their company. Not so long ago, Nokia had a high current value of their software and their products to their company. But there was a bit of a problem with the two other perspectives that we added. How capable are you on sustaining that value? And how capable are you in the future to keep on innovating? So what is valuable now might not be valuable next year. So you might have a high current value now. If you're not able to sustain that value, and if you're not even able to discover new value in the future, you're still maybe not in a very good position. So we've been thinking about value from these three angles, and we've been thinking a bit more. And what if you would define your current value not only in financial terms? We've got some revenues, employees. It's what I sort of call the leanness of your organization. How lean are you in an organization to be able to produce software at a certain cost with a certain number of people and read between the lines the sort of internal structures and meetings and processes and procedures you've got in place because they will influence the cost and the number of people you need. So it's sort of the leanness, product cost, but also how happy are your people producing that software? And maybe even more important, how happy are the people receiving your software, your services? So customer satisfaction. So you might have a high current value in terms of financial things, but if your people are not happy and running away for your company, maybe that's not such a good indication. So we see current value as a combination of those four factors. let's call them metrics, measurements that you can. So you can gather evidence over the current value of your software by those metrics. Looking at your revenues, your product costs, your investments, the number of people you need, but also employee and customer satisfaction. And combine those into what we then call, hey, this is an indication, this is what we would call direct evidence. It's figures, it's metrics, it's direct evidence over the current value of your software. And we don't care how you produce that software. To be honest, I think Scrum is a good way to do that, but you never know. Maybe something else is better. And look at your ability to sustain value, and then you end up with some timing stuff like how many releases are you able to produce per year, or per month, or per day, I don't know, the release frequency. How much time does it take you to go from what we call in the industry from code complete until actually released in production, available for the customers? We call it release stabilization. And then some indication of lead or cycle time, name it as you want. So possibly 3 metrics, part of a sort of recipe to give you direct evidence of your ability to sustain your value. Because you can have a high current value. If you're able to produce like 1 release per year, might be an indication of a not so good future that you have ahead of you. And then there's the last one, ability to innovate. To summarize ability to innovate, it's how much of your money are you spending on innovation against how much of your money are you spending on just maintaining it, keeping it up and running, maintenance, support functions, and so on. So if you look at all the money you spend on product development of your software product, how much of that money is being spent on just keeping it up and running, doing little tweaks, little changes, or spending your money on solving defects or problems that you have, bugs that you have in production? It's all money that you're not spending on really fancy, innovative things, with which maybe you're going to conquer new markets, develop new features, new functions, and so on. So that's an indication of your ability to innovate via a number of metrics, possibly. So that means we've got a sort of starting recipe that says, hey, if you want to gather as an organization, but you can do this at a maybe team level, I don't think that's a good idea, maybe product level, or portfolio level, department level, division level, maybe the complete organization, complete enterprise. You can gather, let's say, 11 metrics that will give you a good clue, good direct evidence of the actual value that the software is bringing to your company. And there's nothing in this about process or adhering to whatever. Yeah? So just a possible starting recipe. Now, there's another recipe we've been thinking about. How can you deal with this? How can you work with this? How can you make this actionable? And as all things in Scrum and Agile, it's loops, feedback loops. And we already know the feedback loops of Scrum, right? So we've got a sprint and a daily Scrum within that, and you've got a number of teams doing that, so you've got a number of those loops in your company. What if you would embed those loops into a sort of general organizational enterprise loop, or product or portfolio loop, and collect evidence, yeah? Value, via the current value, your ability to sustain value, your ability to innovate, discover new value. And let's start, we start by measuring those things and then make assertions. Maybe there's one of the parameters, a number of parameters that we want to increase. We want to become better. We want to increase the value of our software to our organization. So we make some assertions, and then we're going to look at how we are doing the work. And there's so many aspects on how we do the work. It's not only about the process, it's not only about the teams. It's about people, it's about the tools we give them, it's about how we facilitate them, it's about how open actually are we to self-organization and creative thinking and so on, or are we still stuck with schedules and hourly plannings and so on? But there's practices, there's tools, infrastructure. Is there test automation in place? Do they have infrastructure in place and so on? So, but it starts with measuring direct evidence. And then we're going to think about, let's say, circumstantial things, like all those things. And then let's say that we try to improve the organization. We're going to facilitate change. We're going to facilitate improvement. We're going to facilitate, what I like a lot more, adaptation. We're going to allow our organizations to adapt to circumstances, new assertions, and so on. And we're going to do that in a sort of smaller feedback loops. And you might have a combination of feedback loops. Some feedback loops will be about infrastructure, some will be about the process, some will be about engineering, standards, quality aspects, and so on. So we've got a number of feedback loops sort of emerging out of that big feedback loop. That starts with direct evidence, and then we're going to look at circumstances. And then we're going to try to improve the circumstances and then measure again. Yeah. The facilitation loops are probably a lot smaller in time than the big loop. Updating your evidence is not something you're going to do like every day. Might take some time before evidence starts building up. But this is sort of the idea. And I hope you recognize a little bit of Scrum in this. Because there's a big feedback loop, small feedback loops, there's a number of feedback loops. So, and then you start entering a combination of feedback loops where teams are still working in loops. But this is sort of, should we call this empiricism at a sort of management level? Managing your organization via empiricism, inspection and adaptation. And what are we going to gather to inspect? The main thing we want to inspect is evidence. No longer circumstances, gut feel, intuition. Let's look at real, direct evidence of what we're doing. And we've got 2 recipes, we've got 11 metrics that might help you, and we've got a way to deal with evidence. And this is very different from making up some sort of yearly or 2-yearly plan for the organization, setting goals, and then transferring that into an actual plan, and then just 2 years following the plan. This is continuously inspecting, adapting where we are, and it's all driven by the value that your software brings to your organization. So let's try to help managers get this idea so that they can start employing what we call the Scrum mindset, allowing people to self-organize so that they create transparency and in a very transparent way can inspect evidence in this case and start adapting the organization, not in a top-down command and control way, but via facilitation, so that everybody can optimize the value of their work. Where Scrum teams or development teams can optimize the development work, but also managers can start optimizing the value that the software brings to the organization. That's sort of the idea that we have with evidence-based managing of software. Use direct evidence and use it with feedback, combine it with feedback loops, a number of feedback loops, a big one, organizational feedback loop, enterprise feedback loop, and combine it with change loops. And respect the Scrum mindset. So that's sort of the idea. Evidence-based managing of software. It's about optimizing the value of the software, which is very different with optimizing the process or the schedules that you have in place, the timings, the deadlines, and so on. That's very different. You might be successful in, let's say you have a time, budget, scope constraint, and you've estimated the project to take like 2 years, an amount of time, an amount of budget, and at the end of those 2 years, you're successful because you've achieved the schedule, you stick to the schedule, you're within the budget, and you've delivered all of the scope. That's not successful. That has nothing to do with value. That has nothing to do with the impact you're having on your market. So use Scrum and use a Scrum mindset at a managerial level, in the managerial domain, to start working in loops, inspection and adaptation like regularly, all the time, instead of trying to command and control your organization into a 2 or 5 years ambition or plan. It's about, I'm sort of stepping away from the idea of continuous improvement, not because it's irrelevant, but it's more like in today's world, it's about continuous or even better continual adaptation. You're continuously adapting your organization to the market, to expectations, to value, discovering new value and so on. What is valuable today might not be valuable next week or next month or next year. And if you do feedback loops, inspection, adaptation, you will discover that. And there's no faster way, I think, to adapt. So this is sort of evidence-based management, employing the Scrum mindset in the managerial domain via evidence-based management, direct evidence.